Keanu Reeves walked into the hospital quietly, his presence unnoticed at first. He wasn't there for publicity or cameras, just for a single act of kindness. He had heard about a woman named Emily, a devoted fan who had been battling a serious illness for months. Her only wish was to meet him, though she never expected it to come true. When Keanu entered Emily's hospital room, she was resting, her breathing slow, eyes closed. Her family stood nearby, speaking softly. They turned when they saw him, their faces frozen in shock. Emily's mother covered her mouth. "Oh my God, it's really you." Keanu smiled gently and gestured for them to stay quiet. He walked over to Emily's bedside and sat down, his voice soft. "Hey, Emily." Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment she just stared, blinking as if she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. Then, when realization hit, tears welled in her eyes. "Keanu?" "In the flesh," he said, grinning. "Mind if I hang out for a bit?" She nodded, unable to find words. Her family watched, speechless, as Keanu pulled up a chair and began talking to her like an old friend. They spoke about movies, life, dreams, things that made her smile despite the pain. Then Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a book. "I brought this for you," he said. "It's one of my favorites. Thought maybe we could read a little together." Emily took the book with trembling hands, her breath shaky. "I never thought this would happen," Keanu chuckled. "Well, life's full of surprises." For the next hour, they read, laughed, and talked as if they had known each other forever. The nurses and doctors passing by stopped at the door, their faces filled with amazement. No one had expected Keanu Reeves to be sitting there, treating Emily not as a fan, but as a friend. Before leaving, he gently took her hand. "You're stronger than you know, Emily. Keep fighting, all right." Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Thank you." Keanu gave her one last warm smile, then stood and walked to the door. As he turned back for a final glance, he saw something unforgettable. Emily, holding the book close to her heart, smiling brighter than she had in months. And in that moment, everyone in the room knew this wasn't just a visit. It was hope. Days passed, and Emily held on to the book Keanu Reeves had given her like it was a treasure. Every night she read a few pages, hearing his voice in her mind, remembering the way he had spoken to her like she mattered, not as just another sick person, but as a friend. Her nurses and doctors were amazed. Her energy was changing. She smiled more. She fought harder. And then, something incredible happened. Emily's condition began to improve. Slowly at first, then more noticeably. The doctors called it a medical turnaround. Her family called it a miracle. One afternoon, as Emily sat by her hospital window, feeling the sun on her skin for the first time in weeks, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Keep fighting, Emily. I'm proud of you. Keanu." Tears filled her eyes. She clutched the book to her chest, overwhelmed with gratitude. A week later, the impossible happened. Emily was discharged from the hospital. As she stepped outside for the first time in months, breathing in the fresh air, she noticed something, or someone, standing across the street, leaning casually against a motorcycle. Keanu Reeves. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe it. Keanu grinned, lifting his helmet slightly. "Told you were strong." She laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't think I'd see you again." He shrugged. "Life's full of surprises." Then he held out a second book. "Thought you might need a sequel." Emily took it with shaking hands, unable to speak. Keanu put on his helmet, started his bike, and before riding off, he turned back with one last smile. "Keep writing your story, Emily." And just like that, he was gone. Emily held the book close, her heart racing. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. Months passed, and Emily's life slowly returned to normal, or rather, a new normal. Something inside her had changed since meeting Keanu Reeves. She no longer saw herself as just a patient who had been fighting to survive. Now she was someone who had a future, someone with a story still being written. Inspired by Keanu's words, she started writing her own book, a memoir about her journey, her struggles, and the moment that changed everything. She titled it, "Life's Full of Surprises." One day, as she sat in a cozy cafe working on her final chapter, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from her publisher. "Your book is officially being released next month. We're even getting some early media attention." And guess what? Keanu Reeves himself has shared a post about it on his social media. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She quickly opened Instagram, and there it was. A picture of her book, posted on Keanu's official page, with a caption that read, "Proud of you, Emily. Keep writing your story." She covered her mouth, overwhelmed with emotion. She never expected anything in return for what Keanu had done for her. But this was more than she could have ever imagined. As the release day of her book arrived, Emily was invited to a special interview on a talk show. She was nervous but excited, knowing her story might inspire others the way Keanu had inspired her. Midway through the interview, the host suddenly smiled and said, "We actually have a surprise for you." Emily blinked. "A surprise?" The audience began to cheer, and before she could process what was happening, someone walked onto the stage. Keanu Reeves. The crowd erupted. Emily's hands flew to her face in shock. "No way." Keanu grinned and took a seat beside her. "Hey, warrior." Emily laughed, still in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" He shrugged playfully. "Life's full of surprises, remember?" The audience laughed and clapped as Emily wiped away happy tears. Keanu turned to her, his expression sincere. "I just wanted to be here for this moment. Because you did this. You wrote your story, and now the world gets to hear it." Emily smiled through her tears. "Because of you." Keanu shook his head. "No, because of you. I just reminded you of what was already inside you." The interview ended with a standing ovation, and as Emily walked off stage, holding her book in one hand and Keanu's unexpected friendship in the other, she realized something. Her story wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about living. And life? It would always be full of surprises. As the months passed, Emily's book became a huge success. People from all over the world reached out, sharing how her story had inspired them to keep fighting, to embrace life's unexpected turns, and to believe in their own strength. One evening, as she sat on her balcony, sipping tea and scrolling through messages from readers, her phone buzzed with a call. She glanced at the screen. "Keanu Reeves." Smiling, she answered. "Hey, movie star." Keanu chuckled on the other end. "Hey, best-selling author." Emily laughed, shaking her head. "Still doesn't feel real." "Well, it is, and I was thinking, maybe it's time for another surprise." She raised an eyebrow. "What kind of surprise?" Keanu paused for a moment before saying, "How do you feel about turning your book into a movie?" Emily nearly dropped her tea. "Wait, what?" "I talked to some people," Keanu continued casually. "They love your story, and I think the world needs to see it on the big screen." Emily's heart pounded. "Are you serious?" "As serious as I was when I showed up at your hospital room." Emily covered her mouth, her mind racing. "A movie? About her story?" Then Keanu added, "And if you're okay with it, I'd like to play a small part in it. Maybe even myself." Emily let out a shaky breath, overwhelmed with emotion. "Keanu, this is crazy," he chuckled. "Life's full of surprises, remember?" Tears filled her eyes. "Yeah, and you always seem to be the one delivering them." "So what do you say? Think we should make this movie?" Emily took a deep breath, looking out at the stars. Just a year ago, she had been lying in a hospital bed, wondering if she'd even have a future. Now she was about to see her story come to life in a way she had never imagined. She wiped her tears, then grinned. "Let's do it." And just like that, another chapter of her incredible journey had begun.